An Introduction to Cancer Clinical Trials. Sponsored by the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer and brought to you by the Capacity Enhancement Program. What is a clinical trial? It is a research study that is used to test and evaluate new interventions in people. They are carefully controlled and help to determine if new interventions work and if they are safe for people to use. In cancer, clinical trials can be used to test new interventions to treat cancer or new ways to diagnose or prevent cancer. Some clinical trials can be huge. Sometimes they even enroll thousands of participants. But when starting to test a new treatment, clinical trials start small. Before giving a new treatment, especially a potentially toxic one to many people, it needs to be tested in a small group of people to make sure that it is safe. And so, clinical trials are conducted in stages, or phases, starting with Phase 1, and then Phase 2, Phase 3, and sometimes Phase 4 trials. Many new interventions never make it to Phase 3. They are abandoned after poor results in Phase 1 or 2. Each trial phase has a different purpose and helps researchers answer different questions. In Phase 1 cancer trials, an experimental intervention is tested for the first time in a small group of people. Phase 1 trials are used to identify side effects and toxicities and to figure out a safe dosage for further testing. Phase 1 evidence is rarely included in practice guidelines to support recommendations because they are not designed to find out how well the intervention works, and they're not always conducted in the population that the intervention is intended for. If the side effects of the intervention are acceptable, then it might move on to a Phase 2 trial. In Phase 2 cancer trials, the experimental intervention is given to a larger group of people to get more information about safety and to see if it is effective enough in the target population to be studied further in a Phase 3 trial. Some Phase 2 trials are single-arm studies. They only have an experimental group, the group of people who get the intervention being studied. Other Phase 2 trials also have a comparative or control group, and some are even randomized to ensure that the groups are similar at the beginning of the trial. Even though randomized Phase 2 trials have two groups, they're often not designed to statistically compare the differences in outcomes between the groups. Often their main objective is to figure out if the cancer responds to the treatment. They usually do not have enough participants to measure important outcomes like survival accurately. If results of a Phase 2 trial are good, then a Phase 3 randomized controlled trial, or RCT, is needed to definitively figure out if the intervention works better than alternatives. Sometimes guideline developers use Phase 2 trial results to support guideline recommendations, but they need to keep in mind that Phase 2 trials aren't designed to provide the final answer about whether something works or not. Phase 3 trials are RCTs that test the experimental intervention in comparison with standard treatment, or a placebo control, or no treatment. Phase 3 trials usually enroll large numbers of patients, enough to get a definitive answer about whether the intervention works or not. Researchers confirm the effectiveness of the treatment, monitor side effects, and collect information that will allow the experimental intervention to be used safely in practice. Many Phase 3 RCTs are multi-center and some are even international. Because Phase 3 trials are designed to provide definitive answers, practice guidelines very often include them as key evidence to support their recommendations. Once a new intervention has been approved and is in use in clinical practice, Phase 4 trials are used to gather more information about long-term risks, safety, benefits, and optimal use in practice. So, all clinical trial phases have their uses, but Phase 3 RCTs are the most useful for the development of cancer practice guidelines. Remember, all types of studies need to be critically evaluated before being used to inform recommendations in practice guidelines. This has been a presentation by the Capacity Enhancement Program of the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer.